she felt comfortable sharing 33 years ago when she started. It's undoubtedly been a process. By being a part of Blend, she hopes that she can help others feel supported on their individual journeys as well. Outside of Bear, I'm an artist, did some art fairs for many years. Anyone who knows her also knows that she was born a cat lady, and you can see many of her, kitty children there. What's that? There's 8 of them, yes. So perfect. I've been a meow ma to many cats over the years. Other interests include gardening, listening to music, and relearning rusty French. Ian Musk, communications lead, joined Bear Muscatine at the Central Lab 2021, came out as pansexual in 2019. Prior to that, an incredibly vocal advocate for the LGBTQ plus community in his small town. Outside of work, enjoys spending time with his partner, kids, dogs, cats. He is an avid enjoyer of art, video games, film, and music. Alana Becker, Community Outreach Lead. She is an environmental engineer in Bear's Environmental Department. She has been with the company for about 3 years. She joined Blend because she wanted to help in creating a safe and inclusive workplace for other LGBTQ plus colleagues, as well as partake in educating others about LGBTQ plus current events and history. Outside of work, she enjoys being out in nature, spending time with friends and family, and volunteering with raptors. And you get to see one there in the top right, so it's very fun. Pat Saylor is our resident person, helped to cover while Keaton is away. But he is currently a senior process safety engineer, has worked on site for 13 years. He has several friends and family that are part of the LGBT plus community and believe that everyone should be able to be who they are. In his free time, he enjoys spending time with family, playing board and video games, and camping. So just before moving on, I just want to make a note that everybody that we just listed here, and myself as well, I'll give my own introduction here in just a minute, but we are all here to help promote inclusiveness, especially within the LGBT community, but really just as a whole. We are trying to promote inclusiveness. So if you ever need somebody to talk to or have questions or anything like that, please reach out to anybody here that's been mentioned. At the end of this presentation, we do have a little soft cube that we'll pass around if anybody has any questions or comments that they would like to share publicly. But even if it's just privately, please IM, email, hunt us down in person. We all want to help. Oh no, I touched my hair. So sorry. Okay, Iowa City Pride. So it is this Saturday, June 20th. If you're looking for a way to celebrate Pride, stick around after the presentation. We're gonna have a bit of a just what you need to know discussion. This year, we are going to be marching in the parade and generally enjoying the festivities afterwards. We have done the booth in the past, which is a great way to get community outreach, but we thought that it would be more beneficial for people on site to just sort of go there and have a good time. So if you want a group of people to go with, just again stick around after this presentation. Bear is a 2026 silver level sponsor of Iowa City Pride. Yeah, I don't know. There we are. Whoop, right there. So I talked a little bit about this already, but I just wanted to reemphasize, why does Blend exist? It's a question that comes up every now and then, for Blend and then BRGs as a whole. So Blend's mission statement, copied verbatim, is to create a better work environment for LGBTQ plus employees as a strategic partner in inclusivity, advancement, and authentic representation. It's a very wordy way of saying what I already said, that we want to promote inclusiveness. We want people to be able to bring their full selves to work. Strategic partner, yeah, like we are the ones in the Blend leadership team that can help with some of the hard stuff. We know that it is difficult to be a part of the queer community. And even if you yourself are not part of the queer community, but maybe you know somebody who is, whether they're at the site or not, and again, if you just want to have a conversation, we're here for it. Yeah, we are here for you. We have plenty of fun events throughout the years, like we've painted pumpkins and cookies and whatever. Those are great, and we have a great time. But the purpose of them is to sort of build this community, get like-minded individuals in the same room, and we can have those conversations. So if there is anything we can do to help make the workplace more inclusive, again, please let us know. That's why we're on the Blend leadership team. We're passionate about this stuff. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about myself before going into, I have such a tick. I'll talk about myself a little bit before going into the bulk of the presentation. So I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, sort of a similar environment to around here, but also very far from here. Started working at Bayer in 2016. Started as an electrical maintenance engineer at A Unit. Now I'm doing functional safety stuff in the project group. I got married to a cisgender woman in 2019. There she is, Erica, right there. I started my queer journey in 2021, and I'll talk, as I'm sharing my story, I'll talk more detail about that. Joined Blend and came out at work in 2022. In the real world, I enjoy board games and hanging out with friends. So I want to talk a little bit about, what does pride mean to me personally? We're here asking why pride, and I think it's sort of important for me to sort of share a little bit of my story. So in March 2021, I received a fateful message. So up until this point, I was cisgender, straight, assigned male at birth, and I got this message here. Conservatives, they worry about, media and blah, 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 but this right here was all it was. If anybody recognizes this was, I don't know if we still use this system, but this is a Bayer IT ticket. Here it is. User account is now active. She just had her password reset. User should be able to connect to the printer now. That's it. That's all it is. That little sentence. I screenshotted it because whatever, it's important to my story. The idea that somebody a million miles away, I've never met this person, but the idea that somebody could, see me as a woman, it sort of awakened something within me. There were definitely signs beforehand, but for one reason or another, I brushed them aside, I bottled them down, but all I had to read was she just had her password reset, and it's like, oh no, this means something. I didn't want to be queer. I knew very consciously how hard it would be. This is back in 2021. If anything, it's maybe harder now. But there was a lot of negative rhetoric. not just negative rhetoric, in a very political sense, but also just culture, society. There are certain expectations that everybody in this room feels in one form or another, and I felt those very strongly. So to be queer was to fly in the face of that, and it terrified me. So my first real experience with Pride, that's the reason we're here. So March 2021, I received that, stupid little message. October 2021, this was the first Pride that I accidentally attended. So this was a weird time. We were just getting out of COVID. In June of 2021, Pride had been canceled, but they held an impromptu sort of, well, not really impromptu, but they held a sort of, I don't know, replacement Pride, I guess, in the month of October. The month of October is the same month that I got married to that cisgender woman, Erica. And I was, questioning things, going back and forth, and it was our wedding anniversary. And we were going to Iowa City for dinner. It was like at some steak restaurant. And I had no idea. I had no idea that Pride was happening. But you basically had to, the way the restaurant, it was like sort of in the middle of Pride, basically. So it's like we had to park outside, walk through it. And at the time, I'm, questioning things. I'm in the middle of it. And there are these people that are celebrating Pride. And I was not one of them. I was not there. Instead, I was trying so hard to put the genie back in the bottle, as it were. That I was trying to just, have you tried not being gay? That's basically what I was doing. But it felt like a betrayal. It felt like a betrayal to myself, going here and seeing all these people, fully as themselves, dressed in, all the gay paraphernalia. It was like, this could be me. It's not me today, but it could be. And up until this point, and really even still today to a certain extent, I'd felt such shame about being queer and, and what that means and blah, blah, blah. Pride helps to battle exactly that. Pride is the opposite of shame. Pride is a celebration. And I saw these people celebrating, and again, like I was denying that to myself. So June of 2022, this was my first Pride that wow, that quality's terrible, but I attended my first Pride in earnest, where I went to Pride on purpose. By this point, I had more or less accepted that, like, I'm transgender, I'm part of this, community, like it or not. And I went there, and it was beautiful, and I was stressed out of my mind. I hadn't gone out in public very often at all. But Pride is a very safe place to do that. Everybody there is super inclusive. That's what brings people there, right? And I don't know, it was one of those events that sort of cemented for me, this is who I am, that I can be out and expressive. If people knew me pre, 2022 or whatever, I was very shy, reserved, quiet, and I still have a lot of those characteristics. But more and more, I'm always being more expressive and open, and it's who I want to be. And Pride was one small step in that journey for me. So that's my story, very personal, obviously. That's not going to apply to everybody in the room, of course. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of Pride. We're asking why Pride? Well, where did Pride come from? So the 1960s, we're rewinding to the 1960s. If anybody attended the presentation last year, we talked about LGBT history. I'm not going to give the full scale, presentation, but we'll talk about it a little bit. So the 1960s, counterculture, it's in full swing. There's a lot of very famous movements that we still talk about today. The civil rights movement, second wave feminism, sexual revolution, hippie culture, Vietnam draft backlash. The overall mood was very divided. You sort of had the old guard that wanted, social order, social stability, and that was met with a lot of backlash. What it sort of meant, was you sort of had the old order trying to, as they had been for many, many years, suppress groups like, Black folks in America. This image is scary to me. I had to share it, but we have Black men marching, in front of a line of soldiers with bayonets at the ready. That is terrifying. And there's some tanks there in the background. So scary stuff. These are some very, very brave individuals. Woodstock, and hippie culture, just very much again into this counterculture movement. Feminism, this is second wave feminism, where first wave would be like getting the right to vote. It certainly didn't mean that everything is equal for women, so we're fighting for that. And just the backlash to the draft, it was sort of a challenge very directly to authority. And this was sort of the mood going into Stonewall. So like many other minority groups at the time, LGBTQ plus folks were heavily oppressed. As with other minority groups, this would reach a boiling point. This would take the form of the Stonewall riots. So up until the Stonewall riots, protests sort of looked like this. I don't know if anybody can read this, but 15 million U.S. homosexuals protest federal treatment. You had picket lines, they're all dressed in suits and that sort of thing, where what that's referencing, and what all this is referencing here, is that to be gay and a federal employee meant that you were fired. It was viewed as a mental illness, and there was such a thing called the Lavender Scare. I won't get into, but basically, gay folks, trans folks, they were seen as a liability against a communist. They were seen as not normal, let's just say. And this sort of set the stage for the Stonewall riots. So the police officers conducted an unannounced raid targeting illegal homosexual activities. At this point in history, it was literally illegal to be gay, not just at the federal employment level, but if you were found to they're called sodomy laws. If you were found to have conducted in homosexual acts, cross-dressing, that sort of thing, you could be arrested, and you were arrested. That's what this police raid, among other things, there was some mafia ties. I'm not going to get into it, but that's what the police were here at Stonewall to do, was to disrupt this activity. The Stonewall Inn itself, its place, was in Greenwich Village, gay-friendly neighborhood. A crowd had gathered to observe. You know, that's how humans are. If you know you have the paddy wagon there rounding people up, people are going to gather, and there's going to be a crowd. And then a spark point came when a quote, typical New York butch, scuffled with police and shouted to the crowd, "Why don't you guys do something?" The crowd vastly outnumbered the police, and at that point, it had been jeering and, observing, but why don't you guys do something? We all had a collective feeling, this is a quote here, we all had a collective feeling like we'd had enough of this kind of shit. It wasn't anything tangible anybody said to anyone else. It was just kind of like everything over the years had come to a head on that one particular night in that one particular place. And it was not an organized demonstration. This was a spontaneous event. This is not something that had been planned for months or whatever. This was like literally a heat of the moment thing that would go on to spark this sort of gay revolution.
Well, hello. Um, so at this point during the presentation, we had a bit of a glitch. The audio cut out. So we have the original video, but this audio is being recorded after the fact. So I'm just sort of going to speak over my original presentation. We'll see how this goes. The timing might be a little weird, but I don't know. You could consider this a director's cut or whatever. So it cut off. I'm actually gonna mute this because this next slide it cuts out during the next slide. So better if I just mute it. So here I'll go ahead and hit play, and we'll get this show on the road. We'll hit play. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the Stonewall riots at this point, the crowd had turned into this spontaneous riot, as we were just saying in the quote. The police were forced to retreat. Kind of a big deal, there are plenty of gay folks that will attest to the fact that they were far from intimidating, and get the police to retreat was again just it was a sign of the changing times. um Riot police were called. This didn't discourage the rioters. And then they riots continued for several days, and it showed that things were changing. um So the next year was the very first Pride in 1970, New York City, and there were a couple other cities as well. Stonewall and Pride made it okay to be gay for the first time, really in modern times. Through the work of activists, laws began to be pulled back state by state. They still had a long road ahead of them, but things were starting to gain traction. In 2003, the Supreme Court ruled that sodomy laws are unconstitutional. That's sort of what this map here shows. Um, it, it 2003 is not that long ago. And then similarly, 2015, same-sex marriage is permitted in 50 states. So this is really recent history. It is still going on. The fight that they started at Stonewall in 1969. Some version of it continues onwards to today. Um, yeah, this is where timing gets a little awkward. But this is sort of the starting point, right, for Pride. This is what everything else sort of builds off of. So, okay, all right, cool. So I'm actually gonna pause it here for a second because I'm about to play a video which don't have the audio for. So let me do this. But talking about Stonewall making it okay to be gay. I'm going to introduce the concept of the Overton window, and I'll let this gentleman explain it. He can explain it better and more succinctly than I can. So.
The Overton window is a model of policy change, and the Overton window describes one big thing. Ideas that are inside the Overton window are ideas that are politically safe. The public is ready to accept them. But ideas that are outside the Overton window are ideas that might be too radical for the public to accept. And any politician who supports ideas that are outside the Overton window today risks finding himself getting defeated in the next election. Anything that changes the public's perception of an idea can shift the Overton window. Things like think tanks, the media, entertainment, a crisis, or historical events. Anything that gets the idea out of the open so that it can be discussed and debated has the potential to shift the window. The Overton window doesn't always move in just one direction. For a public policy on alcohol, for example, we have the Overton window moving toward less freedom when prohibition was enacted. The consumption of alcohol was made illegal because the public was fed up with the social problems caused by very high alcohol consumption back in those days. When people saw the effects of prohibition, however, they decided that the law that they thought they wanted, they weren't too happy with, and so the Overton window shifted back and prohibition was repealed. So the pro-prohibition forces overshot the Overton window. Policies where the window is shifted toward more freedom would be women's suffrage. Clearly, that's an area of more freedom today than it was 100 years ago. And in an even shorter period of time, many of a citizens' rights regarding firearms have shifted in the direction of more freedom.
Okay, so that's sort of this concept of the Overton window. Whoops, haha. Yeah, I'm playing Slay Spire. But anyway, yeah, that's the concept of the Overton window. This sort of window of social acceptance and what is politically safe to support as a politician and the public and God damn it. Apologies, folks. You can tell this is done in one take because I'm having some glitches. Um, Sorry about that. Oh my God, I gotta. I don't know why. Okay, okay, all right. It's playing. Okay, yeah, I think it's just the end of the video and I'm talking. Okay. Um, wow, sorry about that. But the Overton window, again, is sort of this idea in political science. Basically, what it amounts to is um, behaviors and policies that are socially acceptable and popular. Um, so in particular, this is where pride comes back into the picture. So, yep, politicians and the general population are risk averse. Generally, they will be operating within the Overton window. It's mainstream. That's what makes it mainstream, right? That's where the majority of the population is. Ideas with lots of support are inside the window, which makes the idea safe, which attracts more support. It's sort of the self-sustaining cycle. Um, for an idea to gain lots of support, to sort of jumpstart this cycle, early adopters are required. So this is sort of a concept from tech adoption, but really can apply to any idea, where you sort of have these innovators at the very forefront. Then you have these early adopters, and followed by several more groups after that. Um, but this is where Pride and folks who are part of the LGBT community, this is sort of where they live. They live, sort of at the edges of this Overton window. They are, these early adopters, as it were. Um, they're helping to have this idea, of LGBT acceptance become more mainstream. And that's one of the big things that Pride um, wants to accomplish. Okay, so little metaphor here. So these wildebeest, right? They're holding up at the river. Okay, that's like the mainstream, right? But why are they doing that? You have sort of some of these early wildebeest here. Some of them are going, but most of them aren't. Why not? The other wildebeest are watching. They're watching these early wildebeest. And what are they watching for? Well, they're not stupid, okay? There are dangers in the water. It is not safe, think about it in terms of ideas. There are ideas that are not safe, right? Sort of those people at the forefront, those are the ones that are going to get eaten by the crocodile. Most of the wildebeest, right? Like they're all in the bag, waiting to make sure that the path is clear and safe. Um, and yeah, they don't want to be one of the early adopters, but that's again where Pride is so helpful. It lets us be a little bit smarter than wildebeest. Um, where Pride is a place where early adopters can support one another. So rather than have your solo wildebeest getting picked off, that sort of thing, Pride is a place where we can all get together, and it builds the safety, and it builds community. These people here in the back, protesters, that sort of thing, that's the crocodile. Lawmakers, those are the crocodiles. But Pride is a place where you have counter protesters. You sort of fight back against a crocodile a little bit, where at least in that local location at Pride, maybe not wider society at the time, but at Pride, it sort of is mainstream, and it's beautiful because things that aren't often widely accepted are at Pride. And I want to emphasize the importance of Stonewall in all this. Stonewall, those are the real innovators. Before that, I mean, this was completely unthinkable, something like Pride. Um, we're sort of living with their legacy, which is kind of beautiful, but also we're living with their legacy, we're continuing their legacy, and we're continuing to sort of shift that window to higher uh, acceptance. Um, yeah, so as far as, yeah, moving the Overton window, uh, right, in order to get to that early majority, sort of before you can have a 100th wildebeest, you need there to be a 10th wildebeest, right? So the early majority is reliant on the early adopters. The Overton window is defined by the majority, right? That's what makes it mainstream. It's defined by the majority. The window is moved by actors at the window's edges or outside it, sort of, testing those waters, as it were. So, like over here on the left, we have things like Pride, for example, moving us towards greater freedom. Pride, political activists, inclusive media, that sort of helps to normalize, LGBT folks, and make it, again, more socially acceptable. But on the other side, you have, hateful political rhetoric, bathroom bills, or, quote unquote, common sense legislation, where it tries to make LGBT taboo or like protecting the children, that sort of thing. Um, it's to move the window downwards. The window very rarely expands. There's some rare instances, but usually it shifts. Um, Pride acts to move the window towards greater freedom. Um, and yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, in recent times, sort of the forces on the bottom here, has been in the news quite a lot recently. There's backlash. Same with any idea. There's going to be backlash to it. But with pride and the work of some very dedicated individuals, um, they're working hard to make things more inclusive for everybody, really. Um, I think the version of me at oh God, like I said, you can tell this is a one take and done. Um, yeah, so this window of wider acceptance, it's something that it used to be unthinkable, to be gay in public. Um, but yeah, like I said, people like Stonewall, activists, helped to shift that window upwards. Um, and yeah, we're continuing that fight, right? Like, it's not a one and done deal because there's constant pressure going the opposite direction. Oh my God, I will not stop yapping. Oh my God. I don't know what I'm talking about right here. I wish I had audio, but all right, here's what we'll do. I'm impatient. So we're changing tactics. So I just have the presentation itself here. Yeah, I think yeah. So yeah, this will make things flow better anyway. Okay, so this Overton window, it's not just about LGBT acceptance. Um, you know, it also affects society as a whole. Pride and queer folks push at the edge of this Overton window towards greater freedom. And what was once radical that we saw sort of on that diagram, it can become acceptable by shifting what becomes mainstream. The existence of queer folks, it proves that societal expectations are not law. And this is probably what I would say the biggest impact of uh, pride and, like I said, I talk a lot about activists and such that do the work, 365 days a year. Um, this is probably where it sort of bleeds out into wider culture. But yeah, like boys are allowed to cry, girls are allowed to be angry, love is allowed to be complicated. The expectations of man, woman, or husband, wife are all negotiable. Self expression can be limitless, family can be chosen. Men don't have to be machismo. Women are allowed to be, messy, emotionally messy. Um, and I don't know. I think everybody, to a certain extent, whether you're queer or not, um, you all feel these sort of pressures put on you by society. Um, and I'll just, I don't think that's good. I think that everybody should be able to be their truest self. They shouldn't have to conform to what, um, Aunt Susan thinks. You should be able to be your truest self, whatever that means. Again, you might be queer, you might not be, um, but I think it goes for everybody. Um, and pride and pride helps to push these boundaries forward. I want to talk a little bit about the other side of the window, um, because this is also very important. Pride helps to fight this. So, yeah, while Pride works to make LGBTQ plus ideas feel safer, other actors make these ideas feel more dangerous. And this can take a lot of forms. I just list sort of a few here. I think identifying these as what they are um, is vital to combating them. They're political maneuverings. They're very often not genuine. So, like, protect the children, for example, that's a very common one. It looks like attacks on drag queen story time. Who amongst us, ever even heard of drag queen story time before uh conservative media got a hold of it. um Bans on gender affirming care, that's another one where, in my mind and in the mind of many professionals, um it's gender affirming care for especially for minors, but really anybody. It's a decision to be made between a medical doctor, a therapist or psychologist of some sort, um, a consenting adult, so if it's a child, that'd be the parent, or if you're, an adult, of course, you can um, consent for yourself. But that's who matters, right? That those are the opinions that matter in such a decision. It's not Joe Schmo politician in Washington, and that's sort of what's happening recently. They act like they're protecting the children. No, they're not. No child is being forced to undergo this. That is not what's happening. You know how hard it is to get medical care in the United States of America. It doesn't happen on accident. Okay, like there are hoops to jump through and money changes. I don't know. It's whatever. Anyway, um, but again, it's a political maneuvering, right? Like it. I think it was like yeah, like it was more around sports, like not allowing transgender women, transgender girls to participate in boys sports. And that was a decision made at a statewide level at it was like Wyoming or South Dakota, I forget. But anyway, it affected like three people. But they made it such a big deal where, it was splattered across the media and, it was like a rah rah political win. Again, that's a decision to be made between the student, the coaches, the body that is sort of regulating the sports organization, such as the NCAA, or I don't know what it is for youth sports, but um, those are the people that, again, matter, not, whoever's sitting, at the state capitol. And then book bans. So that's another one where it's restricting information, making it appear immoral. Speaking of, LGBT folks are often portrayed as immoral. It looks like it's religious panic, repent, you're going to hell, that sort of thing. Um, barring transgender service members. This is something that it you are not allowed to be openly transgender um, in the military. That is something that is it was an executive order under President Trump that brought this ban into effect. Uh, it wasn't that long ago. I believe it was under Joe Biden that transgender folks were allowed into the military, and then that lasted for a couple of years before it was stripped again. Um, Fantastical news stories. I mean, very often one small thing will get twisted and blown up into the 24-hour news cycle, and it becomes fear mongering. Legal threat, where again, like if your legal protections or your legal rights are being stripped, that's scary, and it's going to push that Overton window back towards restriction. So, like passport gender markers. So, um, this here, sort of at the top here, this is a quote that it comes from a .gov website. This is from the passport office. So I'll just read it directly. The White House issued Executive Order 14168, defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government on January 20th, 2025. Under the executive order, we no longer issue U.S. passports or consular reports of birth abroad with an X marker. We only issue a passport with an M or F sex marker that matches your biological sex at birth. Um, Again, like who is this serving? Who is it to really, what is it? Defend women from gender ideology? Like, I don't even know. What does that even mean? Do you know? God, like having an F or an M on my passport is what it does. It is, I don't know, shaming, dehumanizing, right? Like if I were to, you know, maybe I'm taking a trip to, I don't know, the Netherlands or something, and I have to show my passport, and I am who I am, and it shows an M on my passport. Well, that's embarrassing. That's I mean, more than embarrassing. It's shitty, is what it is. It's shitty, and for what? For what purpose? Who other? I mean, I don't know. It makes me angry because again, like there is no benefit for the law. It's all political maneuvering. That's all it is. Um, and then removal of civil rights protections. So this is something that happened not too long ago in our state of Iowa. This picture was taken in Des Moines. Um, I'll read the little quote here, but protesters, excuse me, filled the Iowa State Capitol to denounce a bill that would strip the state civil rights code of protections based on gender identity. This is February 27th, 2025. So, Iowa was one of the first states, it was in the early 2000s, to add gender identity as a protected class, similar to race or veteran status, or there's a number of protected classes. But anyway, with this bill, um, it was repealed. Uh, that protection for gender identity, And again, for what? Oh, let's make transphobia legal again. Like I don't know, it's just terrible. And it makes it harder to be trans or queer in general. And this is sort of what the other side of the window is. I yapped here for a long time, but things like Pride, they help to build this space where all this stuff, it's not, you get to take a break from it for a little bit. You get together with like minded individuals and, yeah, it makes it okay again. I want to talk a little bit about the subtle power of society, um, because I think it's more powerful than I think a lot of people think. Um, because I've talked a lot about, the downside of the window, political maneuvering, that sort of thing, where very often it is intentional. Um, what is tricky is that it's not always intentional, it's not always in your face. Sometimes it's hard to spot. Um, so many who work against LGBTQ plus acceptance do so intentionally, but so often society reinforces its own expectations. So like lack of media representation sends a message. I'm partially blocking it off, but you guys get the idea. Here on the right, um, are like a bunch of Disney couples, and how many of them do you think are gay? That number is pretty close to zero, and any one of them can be a romance for the ages, and there's nothing wrong with heterosexual couples or anything like that. But when you look at the whole, there's what, like 30 images here, something like that. Um, when you look at the whole, it sends a message. It sends a message that if you don't, you know, if you don't identify yourself with one of these, couples, these characters, then there's something wrong with you. It's not said explicitly. They never say that, but your brain knows it. Your brain identifies it. Language such as, when are you getting a boyfriend or girlfriend? When are you getting married? When are you blah blah blah. Um, or like, if it's like, a gendered thing, like if you're talking to, a boy, like, are you gonna try out for the football team? Or if your girl's like, hey, come help mom cook. Like again, not that there's anything wrong with having your girls cook with you, but for it to be an expectation, that's where things get dangerous. And then just like stuff like men doing feminine things is embarrassing. So everybody likes The Office, but here I'm gonna just play this little. So again, everybody loves The Office. I'm not gonna tell you to not watch The Office or something like that. But right, like what is this saying? Like yes, it's funny. We can all laugh at it, but it's saying that men are not allowed to be feminine. This is something embarrassing. I know one line that affected me. It was from the movie The Sandlot, if anybody's seen it. But one of the kids says something along the lines of, you throw ball like a girl. And it was like this big dramatic moment and yada yada. And it's like, from a very young age, I'll just speak to my experience. Um, I understood, like subconsciously, this wasn't like a conscious decision that I ever made, but I understood that being a woman or being a girl was bad. It was bad, actually. Um, to enjoy these things was bad. And I don't know. That's pretty crappy, right? Like, there's some part of me that I don't know. I was denied as a kid, and I guess I wouldn't want that for others. And it's not just for children. This affects adults. it stays with you for your whole life, especially if it keeps getting reinforced, year after year after year. Maybe you watch The Office one year, maybe you watch, New Girl another, whatever, like there's watch out for these stereotypes.
I don't think corporate.
So why pride? Okay, that's what this presentation has been about supposedly. Um, well, we honor those who came before us, right? Those people at Stonewall, they did an incredibly brave thing. And remembering the folks that worked to fight for our rights, um, it's important, and that's one of the things that Pride accomplishes. Um, we provide a safe place for people to be their true selves. Those vulnerable folks. That's who really, you know, that's who Pride is for. Pride is for everyone. Okay, and it it really is a beautiful thing. It really is. Um, and then, yeah, we nudge our culture to be a little bit more free, whether you're in the LGBT community or outside of it. Um, I think that we just want people to be able to be their true selves. Yeah, that's it. That's all I've got. So sorry for you know, you didn't get the original presentation as intended or whatever. But hopefully you enjoyed this anyway. Hopefully you learned something. Um I guess, yeah. I guess, oh, hello, puppy. I guess, yes, I love you too. I guess a couple things, just a couple questions or comments at the end that got brought up that I'll share. Um, One of them was along the lines of, what could we do to support? Um, so and I answered the question in two ways. So first as a company and then as an individual. So as a company, um, the Muscatine site is already doing pretty darn good. We have some very strong business resource groups. And we get great funding. We get great support from leadership. Um, and I can't tell you how meaningful that is. Like seriously. I remember when I was, first coming to terms with my identity. I found there's this bare gender transition policy. It's a policy, but it's also a guide of how things ought to be done for somebody who is changing their gender expression. And the fact that this existed, it sent a message to me. It said that, okay, like the company is going to have my back, and like that's really, really important. I don't know, I can't speak highly enough of it. So as a business, I think we're doing really good. I'm really proud of that. Like I was able to it wasn't that long ago. It was at the Muscatine Women's Conference, and uh, the question was asked to the room. There's 300 women here, and the question was asked to the room, what can be done to help promote diversity? And basically, I got to say, um, just put put your money where your mouth is a little bit. Um, and I don't know. I got to sort of gloat a little bit. Um, just having these business resource groups. It's not something that every company has, and I feel um, not just that we have one, but it's a strong one too. Um, And I don't know, I feel very fortunate for that. On a more individual basis, what can be done? Um, Broadcast your support is probably a big one. Have a pride flag, magnets, stickers, whatever. Even if you're not, part of the, gay, even if you're not LGBT yourself, there's nobody that's going to be like, you can't hang that flag. Like, or similarly for pride. I was intimidated a little bit at my first Pride, where it's like, am I allowed to be here? Yes, yes, yes. The answer is yes, always. And that's a great way to show your support also, is to go there, have some fun. There's some shows, there's some booths, and there's a parade. Um, and so that's one way, is sort of broadcast your support. Another way is sort of like I was talking about earlier, be aware of those social pressures, because they're more nefarious than you think. Uh, Going against the grain is so, so hard. It really is, because there's so much in our society all pushing in one direction. And again, whether you're gay or not, whether your kid is gay or not, um, they feel that pressure. We all feel that pressure. So anything you can do to help alleviate that pressure is big. Um, and then I just wanted to say, it was another comment that got brought up, why do we celebrate Pride? I don't know if I focused on it hard enough in the presentation, but a large part of why we have Pride is because we do have struggles. The fight isn't over. If we lived in a world where you could say, hey, I'm gay, and everybody goes, okay, cool, and like that's the end of it, yeah, we probably wouldn't need Pride, you know? But that's not what happens. That's not how it goes. It's a shock. It's, your grandma, whatever. Like it, it's not easy. And until it is, Pride's going to have a place. It's a place where you can sort of get together, and for a day, a month, you can just be your truest self, where those societal pressures, I mean, they're not gone, but they partially melt away. And if you've never experienced a Pride, I highly encourage it. Um, it's a place of such high positive energy, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So I think that's all I have. As always, if you're watching this, there's a very good chance that you are at the Muscatine site, and you care at some level about LGBT. And thank you for watching. And if you ever have any questions or want to support, get in touch with Blend Leadership. And I don't know, it's what we're passionate about. And we're happy to share ideas and provide resources and all that fun stuff. So I've been Lynn Frasco. Thank you for joining me. Um, we'll see how video editing and uploading goes, but yeah, that's my next adventure here tonight. So, well, thank you, and love you all.